from a discussion about the president of basketball ops with the Warriors, how about if we go to the president of baseball ops with the San Francisco Giants? Mark Willard, Larry Krueger, 95.7 The Game. Farhan Zaidi now joins us live. Hey, Farhan, how you doing?
Hey, guys, good to talk to you.
Very good to have you. We appreciate you doing it. Hey, right off the bat, how you feeling about the farm system today versus how you're feeling about 6 to 8 months ago?
We're feeling great. We talked a lot last year on how we had some injuries and some down performances. And, the one silver lining when you have a year like that is when you feel like you've got the talent to bounce back. And we've had a number of those guys bounce back. We've had other guys emerge. And it's a really good vibe and dynamic right now. They're helping out the big league club. We've got guys throughout the system performing well and getting promoted. So a lot of positives going on.
No question, and one of them is Camilo Doval. And Farhan, in April, it seemed like the pitch clocks were bothering him and maybe speeding him up and making him uncomfortable. And now he looks so comfortable. So could you talk to us a little bit about what you guys did to try to help him, speed things up without, having him rush and keeping a young player real comfortable?
Yeah, just a really great job by our coaching staff and also our catchers, Joey Bart, Pat Bailey, Blake Fable. All those guys, I think, played a role in, making Camilo mindful of the pitch clock and keeping the pace going and calling those emergency, bullpen, mound visits when they needed to. So now he seems like he's in a really good groove. He's not even getting it down to the 3-2-1 where you start holding your breath on whether the guy's going to start his delivery or not. So he's done a great job of adjusting, and obviously he's been on an incredible run here, saved a bunch of close games for us, which has been a huge part of the recent success of the team.
Farhan, Larry here wants you to sell at the deadline. I'd like you to buy. Who's going to win this argument?
Well, I hear some of the rumblings about selling, and both as an executive and as a fan of sports, I don't understand that at all. I mean, when your team has a chance to get in the playoffs, and we know anything can happen in the playoffs, you'd like your team to fight for that, and that's sort of my mindset. That's our collective mindset. We think we have a good team to play with. Anybody, this is going to be a big test for us, not just this weekend, but next week when we're back at home playing the Padres and the Diamondbacks. Got a lot of competition in our division, and this time of year, the trade deadline is a month and a half away, and a lot of times the team and the team's performance dictates your strategy. But I hope we're in it, and I hope we're in a position where, look, the perfect scenario is you've got a really well balanced team. You don't have any weaknesses. You don't have to go out there and plug holes and compromise the great farm system development that we've had, but if we're in a position where there are pieces we need to fill or guys we think can help us, we want to be in a position where we're pursuing those guys.
Farhan, I'm mostly kidding about that. I think everyone's open to everything like you're saying. However, I would ask it this way. How do you balance that when the excitement about the young guys is building in such a way? Because I'm sure you don't want to part with those players at this time when the farm is finally bearing fruit. So how do you balance getting the young guys up and trying to win at the exact same time?
Yeah, it's a good question. And really the expanded playoffs has changed the dynamic around the deadline pretty significantly. It used to be that, if you were just competing for a division, you could be 10, 12, 15 games out, and the math was pretty clear that, hey, we need to start planning for next year. Now, with the wild card dynamic being what it is, you have teams that are 4 games out of the wild card spot that decide to sell. And, honestly, that's a difficult rationale for me to wrap my head around. I see the playoff percentages like everyone else does, and, you can be 4 games out at the trade deadline and have only a 30-35% chance of making the playoffs. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're 4 games out, you're one good stretch of 10 games of 2 weeks from being in a position to get in. And so that's a really hard thing to give up on. As for the question on how aggressive to be, again, the perfect scenario is you've got a team that's being fortified by young players. We've seen some of that. We've got a couple of other guys that we may see before the deadline, and you just don't feel like you've got to go out and improve the team externally, that the young guys are providing that extra boost to get you through the end of the season. But, it's always a balancing act. In 2021, we traded away a couple of really good young players to bring in Chris Bryant, and we wound up winning the division by one game. So every little contribution we had, including from Chris, mattered. And sometimes those are the difficult but important decisions you have to make.
Farhan, I watched you guys out of spring, and I thought, man, this team might struggle against left-handed pitching. And then Slater and Haniger got healthy, and you called up Casey Schmidt, and you guys really started to do better against left-handed pitching. But what would you say, just looking at the way this club has played, what was the impact of the young players, not just on the field, but on the chemistry? Because it seems like there's a better vibe since you guys have started to introduce some of these young, talented guys.
Yeah, I think it's really uplifting. You've got veteran guys who, it's such a grind getting through the 6 months and the 162 games, and suddenly you've got a kid coming up, in the big leagues for the first time. You're seeing everything for the first time through their eyes, and you're celebrating their first hit the first time they get interviewed after the game. Our guys have made quite a practice out of dousing these guys with every substance and liquid imaginable when they come back in through the clubhouse after a win. So that kind of thing, I completely agree with you. It adds an energy that you wouldn't have otherwise, and it creates an added sense of responsibility for the veterans on the team. Again, you're thinking about that grind, and now they're not just thinking about my at-bats and how I'm performing, but they're like, hey, I got to help Casey out. I've got to, help Pat out. And when guys kind of have those added responsibilities, it just changes the vibe. It changes the dynamic, and it helps you get through the grind of the season. So I know our fans have been really excited about these guys, and rightfully so, but I think they've also injected a little bit of energy into the clubhouse, which has been great.
Farhan Zaidi with us here. Larry in for Dibs, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Farhan, I bet you know this about you, like you are in some ways a face for analytics, even though that's all over the place. It's all over baseball. And if analytics is about math and playing percentages, then where do you stand on the idea of these 9-figure, $300, $400 million contracts, especially after the Correa experience? Because quite frankly, analytically, they seem like a bad bet.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think, when you're talking about upper echelon players, there's a certain cost of doing business. And, when you're talking about position players in their prime, guys like that, those are really the best bets out there that you're, going to get value for the investment. But, now the market seems to be factoring that in, and those deals this past offseason went to a place we haven't really seen them go before. So it'll be interesting whether we see a little bit of a correction in the market going forward, whether those deals wind up being a stepping stone for more deals like that. And again, I think like you said, we were in that market this offseason, and I think we did it with the recognition that, hey, we may be paying for these deals later. We may not be getting our money's worth in terms of production in the later years of this deal, but we're willing to do it because we're trying to push chips in right now. And again, if you're operating, in the best possible way for your organization, you're not really kind of, mortgaging the future in a way to push more chips in the present. So, again, it's just the cost of doing business, and I'm sure we're going to be having those conversations this offseason and off seasons to come, but certainly a different dynamic in that superstar position player segment of the market this past offseason. It'll be interesting how it plays out going forward. You
guys are really playing well, 25-15 since the beginning of May, the most wins in the majors, best run differential in the National League. But your job is to always kind of look ahead. So what gets you to October, Farhan? What do you guys need? Is it starting pitching? Is it bullpen? Is it defense? What do you view as the need for the club that would get you into October? I think that's what all Giants fans want to see, is this club playing in October.
Yeah, I personally think that our offense, when everybody's healthy, which seems like it's never going to happen, but we've had it for stretches. But I think we've seen it for enough periods where we've had just enough guys healthy that you can see how productive this offense can be. It's interesting when I compare it to 2021. There's some similarities because we do match up a little bit. We've got different looks against left-handed pitching and right-handed pitching. I think one difference is, we have more everyday bats. We have more right-handed bats that you're going to leave in there when the left-handed starter is out of the game. Guys like J.D. Davis and Thairo Estrada are all-star game candidates. And even from the left side, Lamont's been hitting lefties better. Conforto's got a track record of hitting lefties. So we're a little bit more split-proof, even though we do like playing the matchups, and we've won some games doing that as well. So, but really looking forward, when you're talking about the playoffs, you're thinking who's starting game 1, game 2, game 3, game 4 for us, and who are our 3, 4, maybe 5 relievers who we know are going to get the bulk of the important innings in a short series. So you really start, it's kind of like the NBA. You sort of shorten the playing rotation, and it happens that way with pitching staffs in the playoffs as well. So we've got to make sure that, our front end 7, 8 guys are guys we really believe can get us through playoff series.
Farhan, I want to see if you can answer this question without using the phrase "it's a good problem to have." What happens if Matos is amazing and he sticks, and then Haniger gets healthy? Because you had stated even a week ago, right now we don't have a spot. Where are we going to put the guy in the outfield? And you've signed Haniger. With that money, that's supposed to be your starting outfielder for 3 years. So what happens if Matos is just crushing it for 2 months when Haniger gets healthy?
Well, I think if this is unfortunately, given the prognosis we have on Mitch, going to be a while. It's going to be a couple of months, and if Luis plays the way anything like what he was doing in Sacramento, if he shows the ability to be a productive everyday major league player, we're not going to send him down. He's going to stay with the team, and we're just going to have to figure out how the pieces work around him. I'm trying not to use the phrase that you mentioned, but Gabe has shown the ability, our staff has shown the ability to manage a rotation of guys, to get guys days off, and like we talked about, to play matchups when it makes sense. So it'll make for a deeper roster, and we may have to move some things around, but I don't see us sending Luis back if he plays well these next 2 months. That'll be a great development for us.
Farhan, let's talk Bailey for a second, man. I love watching Bailey. I mean, that little block at home plate was such a veteran move. His framing's nice. His hitting's nice. I mean, he put a throw at second base on the bag. All Crawford had to do was just apply the tag the other day. Last 10 games, he's like 12 for 35, 3 doubles, a triple, a home run. Talk to us a little bit about Bailey. He was your first pick, and obviously he's a really nice all-around player. Talk to us a little bit about his kind of, matriculation through the system.
Yeah, I remember when we drafted him in 2020, a lot of the conversation, the comp was actually Yasmani Grandal, who, I had for some time in LA, a switch hitting catcher with power and patience, good framer, good defensive player. And that's a really valuable package if it all comes together. And I think for Pat, and it's just true for a lot of guys drafted, particularly in that 2020 draft, the COVID year, it was just a weird start to his career. His first experience was, coming into camp before that abbreviated season started, and then he was at the alternate site. It's no secret he struggled a little bit early in his career, but he's really come around. He's developed physically, and I think what we see, we're not terribly surprised by the defense. He's always been an elite defensive player, although to your point, some of the specific things, the throwing, the framing, the way he's managed the staff has been even beyond our high expectations. But I've just been really impressed by his approach at the plate. You've seen the power of the patience, and just high quality at bats right out of the gate, which we know can be a challenge for rookies. So that all around game, when we called him up, we were just hoping he could hold his own defensively, and we went to him partly because of his familiarity with our pitching staff. And we just figured if he could manage the staff, that would be good enough. But the offense that he's gotten, we thought he had this upside, but for him to do it this quickly has been really impressive to see.
Farhan Zaidi with us here on 95.7 The Game. Farhan, I remember, and I wonder about your free agency experience last offseason, and I mean that all told, everyone you did get and everyone you didn't get. Prior to that, you had sort of, and I know you'll remember this comment, but you had commented that you guys are finding that at times with certain players it's difficult in terms of geography to get players to come here, and so you had started to target players with local ties. But that was before another round of free agency. Did you find that again? Is that still, and I don't know if problem is the right word, but is that still an issue that you guys are dealing with?
Yeah, I think some of those comments were taken as a little bit more incendiary towards, the Bay Area, Northern California, than I certainly meant. I mean, this is home for me. I love living in the Bay Area. I think it's the best place in the country to live. But, baseball players are from all over the country. The guys that played and grew up on the East Coast, they, want to play for East Coast teams. They want to have spring training in Florida, and all things being equal, that's going to be their inclination. So, I think if you look at the players that we did wind up signing this offseason, they were either guys who had West Coast ties or guys who had some kind of personal connection or ties to our organization. Maybe they played for one of our coaches. Maybe they were somewhere that myself or Pete Patilla, our GM, or somebody else had as a player at some previous time. So, you cast a wide net in free agency. You don't want to eliminate anyone, but, you're competing with 29 other teams, not always 29, but at least a number of teams. And so having some inroad, having some advantage, I think those tend to be the successful free agency pursuits, and that's what we saw this past offseason.
These lefties that you got coming are really intriguing. We had Kyle Haynes on earlier, and he described Carson Wisenhunt's changeup as a Bugs Bunny changeup. And, Wisenhunt just looks incredible. And then I saw Harrison pitch last night. He's looking great at AAA. Do you view them, I know they're on the fast track, but do you view them as contributors this year? Are we going to see them this summer up here, or how far do you think they are away?
Yeah, I mean, I think once guys are in AA and certainly AAA, they're just a phone call away. And with Kyle, a big landmark yesterday, reaching 5 innings for the first time. We've been a little bit careful with his pitch counts, but he also hasn't always been efficient, even though he's racked up a bunch of strikeouts and he's got a really good ERA for that league. And so seeing him get to 5 innings and I think just a hair over 80 pitches, that was great to see. Wisenhunt does have the really double plus changeup that he can go to any time. He's a college guy. He's been a really quick mover and he's thrown a ton of strikes. And hey, I mean, Luis Matos and Patrick Bailey both started this year in AA. So we know it can happen fast once you get to that level. So I think for both of those guys, it's very much a real possibility for them not to just pitch for us, but to, really impact our club this year. And I'd say particularly with Kyle, who's, been in Sacramento all year, has pitched pretty well there. I mean, we think he's really just, a small adjustment here and there and throwing a few more strikes away from being able to help us.
Farhan, it has been announced that Max Muncy has just been placed on the injured list. Your thoughts?
Well, they've got plenty of good players. So, I saw they called up Michael Bush, who's a great young prospect for them. And if he does what Max Muncy has done against us the last few years, I will tip my cap. Max, I'm sure, is going to be just fine in the long run. Wish him the best. But, he's put a number on us these last few years, so maybe that gives us a little bit of help this year.
Speaking of Max, and when you first encountered him, definitely want to get your thoughts tonight on what has taken place over the last week and months and years with your former employer in the Oakland A's.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it was great to see them go on that nice run here, winning a bunch of games in a row, because I think they've got a lot of good young players on that team, and it's nice to see them coming together a little bit. Obviously, I know the good front office guys there, worked with them, and wish them the best. I mean, Oakland's got a special place in my heart. It's where I started my career and have a lot of fond memories there. And it's nice to see them playing better now.
Farhan, wonderful to have you, man. Thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight.
All right, good talking to you guys.